So if we move back to the data center floor plan, and if we move the cursor along to where we've got the More icon on the right-hand side of the screen, here we can select T&H Psychometric graph. This is one of the key features that we've introduced into NGEN to allow customers to quickly see which sensors are in range and which sensors are out of range on the ASHRAE recommended guidelines. And you can actually hover the cursor over the sensors included in the system and see the data related to those sensors. But then you can also see which sensors are out of range. And this is a very useful scenario to understand how well you're managing the environment with the temperature humidity sensors. Here we've created an image which illustrates two installations with two different customers. And these gives you very good examples of how the delta T can help in understanding where airflow issues may be occurring. Obviously there are three delta values on each triangle. The first delta value ideally should be as close to zero as possible, as this shows the heat increase from the air delivery by the cooling unit to the inlet of the rack. Now, in the case of the triangle on the left, if there's a delta T of 10 degrees, it would indicate that the inlet temperature to the rack is higher than the temperature that left the cooling unit. So in other words, it's 10 degrees higher than it should be. Obviously, this change in temperature means that the room is not working very well on the airflow side. The larger this delta T, the bigger the problems the customer would have in airflow. So in this case, you can see quite clearly that customer on the left has some issues in this area, whereas the customer on the right is certainly more efficient with a 1.1 delta versus a 9.6 delta. If we look at delta 2 on the bottom of the screen, we've got two very different values as well. This delta T is different to the other two deltas, as this is showing the temperature change from the inlet to the outlet inside the rack. So in theory, this delta is less accurate in our delta T triangle, but if done correctly, it could help to calibrate the cooling units, which again is a very important aspect of the data center management. By getting better accuracy on this delta, a facility manager could set the cooling units to deliver the right amount of air with the right temperature. So in other words, if used correctly, you could help to set up the cooling units to deliver exactly what is needed by the servers, again achieving huge efficiency levels. The final delta, delta 3, again is very similar to the first delta insofar as it should be as close to zero as possible, as this is showing the heat loss from the outlet of the rack back to the return air on the cooling units. The larger this delta, the bigger the problems again the customer would have with airflow. Hopefully, by showing a bit more detail around the delta T, it's starting to illustrate how useful NGEN is becoming by using our hardware solutions or third-party airflow sensors and data coming into NGEN to illustrate how we are showing efficiency levels between key points inside the data center.